All right. Hello, everyone. I'm Jenny, School Event Coordinator at Boswell Book Company, and we're hosting tonight's event. Today is day 4,438 of us being in business, and thanks so much to all of you because without you, we wouldn't have a bookstore. I'm so happy to welcome you to our event celebrating Jamie Pacton's delightful new YA, Lucky Girl. Jamie and I met in 2015 when we both made it into a writing contest called Pitch Wars. I think it's safe to say that both our writing careers have been up and down since then, but Jamie is definitely on an upswing at the moment. Her new book is about a 17-year-old girl who not quite legally wins the lottery, and it is so much fun to read. I am doubly excited to introduce Jamie today because her book is set right here in Wisconsin, and Jamie lives right here in Wisconsin. I love that her fictional small town is both charming and a little bit menacing. In conversation with Jamie today is Elise Bryant, who is visiting us from Southern California. Elise is the author of Happily Ever Afters, which Becky Albertelli called the nerdy, big-hearted rom-com of her dreams. And if you would like to order a copy of Lucky Girl from Boswell Book Company, you will get this fabulous book plate as well as some swag. So welcome, Jamie. Welcome, Elise. I'm so glad you're both here.
Hi. So glad to be here. And Elise, I'm delighted to finally talk to you in person after months.
I know. Yes, we
so
DM a lot.
I actually think we didn't plan this, but it occurs to me to books up and just note how beautiful they look together. They're kind of just like kindred spirits. Like
yes, book best friends, teal best friends.
Yeah, so do you want to maybe start by talking about what your book's about, and then I'll talk about mine, and then we can get into our questions? Or
yeah, sure. But I want to make this about you and your beautiful new book that came out. But yeah, so I wrote Happily Ever Afters. I have a whole bunch of them right here. Happily Ever Afters is about a 16-year-old romance writer who decides to make her own life into a romance novel in order to help cure her writer's block and get some inspiration. And you'll notice it is the same color as Lucky Girl. And I loved Lucky Girl so much. It's just such a fast-paced, funny, beautiful book, and I'm just so excited to be here today celebrating this book with you. Yeah, so why don't you give us your pitch, your summary of the book for if anyone hasn't read it yet. And if you haven't read it yet, you need to order. There's a link here. You need to order it.
Thank you. And I love your book. I think your book is hilarious, and there's so many scenes that I don't want to spoil anything. Perfectly charming rom-com that just kind of breezes along, but then you're like, oh, wait a minute, it really made me think about this or that. And so in some ways, to segue, that's kind of what I was hoping to do with Lucky Girl. So on the surface, this book is about Fortuna Jane. She's 17. She buys a lotto ticket on a whim, and much to her surprise, it wins. And so she's the sole winner of a $58 million jackpot, which most of us would be like, great, this is going to change everything. This is wonderful. And for Jane, it just causes problem after problem after problem. And the first being like, how is she going to cash it? She thinks, no problem, I'll just cash it when I turn 18 in a few weeks, but Wisconsin and probably in many other states, if you've bought the ticket as a minor, you can't actually cash the ticket ever. It's just illegal. So then Jane has to find someone to cash it for her. And her options aren't good. Her best friend, who's a wonderful human, is also just 17. He's an investigative reporter, or wannabe investigative reporter, so he's trying to find the winner. Her mother is a hoarder who holds on to other people's memories via like collecting all the junk she can find in the area and in junk shops and thrift stores. Her grandmother is like a sort of like non-materialistic hippie. And then Jane's ex-boyfriend is kind of back in the picture with some designs on this money. And so problems just build up, and it leaves her wondering, is this much money really a bad thing? And so really it's a short meditation on what money means to us and what it means to have too much or to be enough, or in Jane's case and our mom's case, to get over losing someone. So kind of playing with all those ideas. In the shortest book I've ever written, actually. I still can't believe I got away with this length, but did that bother you that it was short, or did it work? Like,
No, it works because it's so you're able to pack so much into this book. And I read it like in one sitting very fast, but it didn't feel like anything was lacking. Yeah. And like you were saying, like there's you introduce all these complications, because like when you hear that money, you're like, cash that ticket. Why don't you cash the ticket? But you introduce so many complications that makes sense, and they make the story so interesting because the choice is not so simple for her because of all of these things. And so I guess I'm curious, what came first to you? Because Jane and her relationships and her life and who she is she's such a rich character, but then you have this like great hook of like her winning the lotto. So what came first to you, like the character of Jane or the premise of the lottery ticket?
I think for me, I tend to work off of premises. That's where I begin. So even like with Kit, it was a girl wants to be a knight and she's a wench, and how do we get from A to B? And then I kind of meet these characters along the way. So same thing with Jane. I kind of knew that she had to come from a place where this much money would change everything, but I didn't know much about her. So I just kind of, ever since, like, even before I wrote Kit, I knew I wanted to write a lottery ticket book. Like, I remember talking to like Pitch Wars friends back in like 2016 about the lottery ticket book, but I had no idea what that book would look like. And so it definitely evolved into the sort of like, I don't want to call it a swamp, but she did not have as many problems in her earlier drafts. And then my editor was like, but wait, let's make it a little bit more complicated, or let's make her ex-boyfriend a little more terrible. And I think that's where you see some of her humanity, if you will, just coming through as she's grappling with all of these things. For me, and I may have said this in other interviews, the really breakthrough moment with me, I couldn't figure out for a very long time why she couldn't give her mom the ticket. That was what really was stalling me out. Like, because that's the obvious answer, right? Just give it to your mom. Your mom will cash it. And I was like, why is her mom so terrible? But also like not, terrible and not a right choice for this, but also not like so bad that it would be a no-brainer. And we were driving and I was just kind of thinking and talking to Adam about it. And then I was like, oh, she collects other people's memories. So it's not just that she's a hoarder, she's like hoarding in this very specific way. And that kind of broke the whole book open for me to kind of figure out characters and come at it that way.
Yeah.
Because I did watch a lot of episodes of Hoarders.
Oh, okay. Oh no, go ahead. Yeah.
I'm just gonna say, and so on Hoarders, it's hard to actually like, it's not hard to feel sympathy, but a lot of those episodes, like people are just collecting like old fast food containers and things that are just kind of gross, some of it's pretty icky. And in Jane's case, I wanted it to not just be this like mess, but also just this like sentimental mess, that was weighing them all down. So anyways, yeah, that's kind of that was my aha moment for character, at least.
Yeah, you do it so masterfully too, because I felt like I was like right there with her, like going back and forth, like weighing the options, like, but if she gives it to her mom, this might happen. And it was just, yeah, I was along for the ride the whole way.
I'm glad to hear that. I've actually had some readers who were like, oh my God, I was so anxious the whole time. I'm like, excellent. That's
yes.
At least it's over quickly so you can figure it out. But yeah, no. And so I guess my question, and this is the question I always get asked in this, is what would you do if you won the lotto? And do you believe in luck? And so we can both tackle that if you want. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's such a dream of a question. Like your mind goes everywhere. But I think I'm so practical that I think, you think about the crazy things that you could buy, but my brain just goes to like, oh, pay for my house, like pay off my house, pay for my parents' house, college for my kids, like all of the practical things. I don't even know beyond that what you could do with that money, because it's so like, it's like a fantasy, it's not something that really happens to people. So I think that, yeah, just pay off my house, maybe help, like, I don't know, do stuff for the community, which Jane talks about too, like doing stuff for her own community. And then as far as luck, I think I believe in luck. I think I do. I'm a very like superstitious person. Yeah, I think I do. Because especially like working on like, you know, being an author, working on publishing, so much of it is luck and just how things work out. And so that's definitely made me believe in it more. What about you? Yeah, like you said, I'm sure you're asked this all the time.
And, actually, I think my answer to this has evolved even through talking to people about it. I don't know if I believe in luck so much, but I will say you have one of the luckiest publishing stories I've ever heard, right? Wasn't it like from create to deal was like 3 weeks or something? Like it was the perfect book to the perfect editor at the perfect time. And it was a magical thing. And I don't know if that's luck because I think that has a lot more to do with your hard work and the beautiful story you told. And so, like, rather than just like some supernatural force being like, this is what happened, but maybe, like it was definitely amazing. So, yeah, I mean,
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think it is supernatural. I don't know, because so many people work so hard. It just, yeah, I think it's luck.
It could be too. I just think it's tricky because then we have to say some people are unlucky and that gets messy. And I think
that's true.
I think about that a lot with the lotto too, because the lotto is the most ridiculous thing. Like thinking you're going to win the lotto and playing consistently is really, it's such a fluke if you do win. Did you hear about the person in California who washed her lotto ticket?
No.
She won like $28 million or something. She washed it. And so now all the money is going to go back into the school system.
Oh my gosh. And see, when I was reading the book, Jane does so much research and she finds that so many of the people that win, they're very unlucky. Like all these terrible things happen to them, which I was like, what?
Yeah, which goes back to that other question of what would you do if you won the lotto? And this notion that you were kind of hinting at, like, I'm practical. I would pay my bills. I would pay off my house. I would maybe buy a house with a pool or live somewhere closer to takeout. And, like there would be things we would do. But when you're starting to talk into like tens of millions of dollars, like that's a whole different way to move through the world. And Adam and I were talking about this, like you could literally give yourself, like pay off everything, put $2 million in the bank, and then give the rest of your money away. And you could still be quite comfortable for the rest of your life.
Yes.
But people don't always do that. And that's kind of the point of this book too, is thinking about how money, like this much money makes people, I don't want to use the word crazy because that's not the right word, but it really sort of brings out darker sides in some people when they're like, I just want that one thing. And it twists them in this way, and I mean, it's almost like a Breaking Bad scenario with Holden, he just keeps getting worse because he can't resist the temptation of this much money, like, especially once he knows James has it. So yeah, anyways, I think I would cash my lotto ticket, of course. I would like to try and keep it a secret. So if I didn't have people like in my business and at my door, but yeah. I'd like the chance to fail at being a good lotto winner. But yeah, I don't know. And I think that, and one of Megan and I were talking in my last event just about money and how so many people like dream of these windfalls as ways to save their life and change their life, and how that is another idea I wanted to kind of grab onto here and interrogate, because I actually think it's pretty destructive to like think that a windfall is going to be what saves your life. So you're making decisions not based on sensible financial literacy, but like, oh, I'll be fine. We'll just charge it. It'll be fine. Down the line, we'll pay it off. And I don't know, as an author or an aspiring author, I definitely felt that way because, I came up in J.K. Rowling's time and everybody was going to make that much money as an author. That's how it was. Or Suzanne Collins, like Hunger Games money, which has not been my experience to date.
Yeah, I don't think it's most people's experiences.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Okay. I want to remind people to put questions in the chat or in the Q&A section if you have any of them. So you mentioned Holden. Let's talk about Holden.
About Holden, yes.
Yeah, because I just really love what you did with him and his character, because I think it's just because I read so much romance. I was like searching for that in the beginning. I thought it was going to be one way. I'm not going to give spoilers, but yeah, just I was thinking it was going to be one kind of story. It's not quite that. But I think what you did is just was so wonderful, because you really captured what it's like to, so Jane, I should tell the audience, Jane at the beginning has broken up with this boy Holden. And so in the book, it really tackles what it's like to like fall out of love with someone and realize who they are, and just navigate how, that really difficult period after you're like learning to live without someone. So I'm curious, how did you come up with this character of Holden? Where did that come from? Like creating him as a character, and then his relationship with Jane. What was your inspiration there?
That's a good question. I struggled a lot with Holden because I also love romance. And after writing Kit, which is a romance slowly in the end, but it got billed as much more romance.
Mm-hmm.
Do I want to do another romance? And I was on the fence. And then I thought a lot about my own teen experience. And I did date in high school, but I had kind of like one long-term boyfriend. And then we broke up for a while, and then we got back together, and then we broke up for a while. And then, so I did have these periods of like not in a relationship or after a relationship. And I did a lot of thinking as I was writing this book about, well, and I've done a lot of thinking as an adult about sort of the patterns we establish in our teenage years for like going back to someone. I will just say, without going into too much detail, that the person I dated for a long time was not good for me, and not a good, like, not the right choices I would want for my own child, kind of thing. But I learned a lot from that, and it wasn't all bad. It was teenage, and it was not a rom-com. And so I kind of wanted to honor that, because I do think a lot of teenagers, like, it's hard to always be reading books where things work out, because for a lot of people, they're, getting broken up with, or they're dumping someone, or they're staying in relationships that aren't good for them. And that's the one thing I wanted Jane to really think about, is like how to say no and how to figure out how to be enough. And some of that, just like the heart of some of that, came from personal life stuff that I was kind of sifting through and working through and in therapy for and stuff. I wrote those in because I do think that's a bit of a journey that maybe started in teenage years. But of course, the problem with Holden being the one that all of this is directed towards was not making him too over the top, like villainous. So like I said, in the beginning, he was much nicer. He was just like a kind of jerky ex-boyfriend. And then in another round of edits, he became this like much twirling villain. And so then I had to like come back and figure out, like, why would he want this money so bad? Like, I see why he dumped Jane, which is no big deal. Like, that happens. But why would he go to these lengths to try and get this ticket? And why would he become pretty dangerous to her? And it's just because like his she was in the way of his aspirations. And you see this in movies and stuff too. So I don't know. It was kind of an evolving process with him. I really don't like him, but I do understand him and where he's coming from and what he wants. I just don't think it's a very good thing to want. Like the whole golden toilet lifestyle, which is just an objective correlative in all of this. Like, I think a lot of people do that. A lot of people make really terrible choices because money is driving them, or they say yes to, lifestyles that they get to their, later in life. They're like, oh my gosh, I've wasted everything in order to chase this, like, I don't know, Hampton's lifestyle or whatever it might be. Yeah, so that's how that came about. But really, truly, I wanted to write a breakup book and then show all of the messy aftermath, because it's not so simple as like, we're just done. Even as adults, it's not that simple. And I was very pleased with how it ended up with her, like, because you can see there's a part of the story where you're like, maybe they're gonna get back together, like that scene on the boat, and you're like, oh, and then no. So yeah. I did have a question for you about romance, if you want to answer. I wanted to ask, like, and I think this is important as you write YA contemporary, because a lot of readers' expectations in YA contemporary is that there is going to be romance. And I wanted to know kind of how you grapple with that, and if you're ever tempted to write against that, because I feel like that's what I did in Lucky Girl, was a very deliberate, like, we're going to have, like, the biggest love story in this book is like Jane and Bran, so their platonic friendship, and then like her and her mom eventually. So yeah, are you ever tempted not to write that happily ever after?
I grew up reading romance, reading YA romance, and so that's why I love to write it now, because it's like I'm creating the stories that I wish for as a kid, with girls that look like me. And so that's why I'm just so drawn to writing these stories, because it's like everything I wanted then. But also I love romances because I love the guaranteed happy ending, it feels safe to be reading them and writing them because like I know how it's going to end. It's like the guaranteed dose of joy at the end, but I mean, my stories, in addition to like the love, the love story, the happily ever after, there's always, I love to explore all the other types of love in a teenager's life. So in my book, Happily Ever Afters, I deal a lot with the love between her and her family, especially her brother and her mom, the love between her and her best friend Caroline, and then also self-love, which is, I know, a major theme in Lucky Girl too, because I think, like you were saying, like those are just as much, like they're just as important in a teenager's life as a romantic relationship. I know growing up, I mean, I dated when I was in high school, but the ups and downs of my friendships, like that was way more significant in my life. And yeah, like you were saying, I loved what you did in Lucky Girl with the relationship between Jane and Bran, because you don't see that very often in YA. I think so much in YA, if there is a girl and a boy, they end up together. Like that's what people are expecting. And I wondered when I was reading if that's where it was going to go, but it didn't go there. Like it's a platonic relationship, the whole way through. So yeah, what led to you writing that relationship? Because I just love it so much. You don't see it in YA.
Yeah, this book's dedicated to three of my best friends who I love and who my friends are so important to me. And I kind of wanted to write a book that, like you said, honored all those other types of love in our life. And so as I was thinking about Bran, I definitely also was tempted. There's that moment when they've just done their heist, not really heist, and she's leaning on him and he figures it out. And I was like, oh, this could be a kiss moment. But no, he's got a long distance girl. He loves her. And Jane loves her. And I think that's a good thing. Like it's good to have that friendship. So anyways, I just kind of wanted to write a book that honored my friends and showed that I really do think it's good to sort of let boys and girls be friends without having attraction necessarily be there or having to worry about that, because I think that's very true to life. I had a lot of guy friends that were just my friends, and yeah, like I think that's okay, and I think normalizing platonic friendships would be a great thing in YA, which of course you see so many like friends to lovers is a trope for a reason, and a wonderful one. But like it is nice sometimes to just resist that. Now I will tell you that if I had my wish, and could just publish whatever I want. What I want to write for a third book, which is obviously not the third book out on submission, is I want to write a road trip book with like at the end, and then Jane gets to join them, and like so you get to see all of them together, and then there's other dynamics. Like I would really love to play with that, but that's down the line. But yeah, so no,
Yeah.
I mean something different, platonic friendships and a ex-boyfriend, and I think so far people are responding to it pretty well. I've not gotten a lot of like I've not been reading reviews, but I've not seen a lot of people like tagging me. I'm so mad about this.
Well, it feels so authentic. I think it's authentic to a real teenager's life, and I think that's why it's so refreshing to see.
Thank you. One question I wanted to ask you, and I think both our books do this, like the setting in your book, it's not exactly Long Beach, is it? But it's California, right? And it's familiar, like, am I
It's
right
Long Beach. It's Long Beach, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But yeah, so it's where I live, but it's my own Long Beach universe.
So we both kind of fictional versions of the towns we live in, and I wanted to ask you why you did that, and has that changed how you live? Because now when I drive around my town, it's still like my dorky little town, but I'm like, but that's where I imagine Jane doing this one thing. Has it changed Long Beach for you?
Yeah, that's such a good question, but yes, it definitely has, because so Happily Ever Afters is set not just in Long Beach, but where she lives is my neighborhood in Long Beach. I got very, very close there because, at the dreaming stage of like when I was coming up with this book, walking around my neighborhood, I'm like, that's where that could happen. That's where that could happen. And so, yeah, I definitely, in my head, I can see the characters there. And then my kids will point out, like, because they haven't read it because they're too young, but they know like where different scenes happen. So they'll point it out. And then a very weird side effect is that because I set it in my town where I live, a lot of people in my town have read the book. And so, yeah. So like when I'm dropping like my kid off at preschool or getting coffee, I'll have people come up to me and talk about the book, which is just, especially like, you know, debuting in a pandemic, I haven't really been able to meet readers face to face, but that is the connection. That's the one time I do get to talk to readers, is when they'll stop me in just normal life. And now my kids think I'm like famous. But I'm like, no. They think because we'll get stopped and they'll be like, oh, I loved your book. They think that's just going to happen everywhere, but it's just in our little bubble that is happening. But yeah, how is it for you? Like, you know, setting your book where you live?
I live in this very weird town where we're not super friendly with our neighbors. Like, it's a nice little town, but like we tend to go into Milwaukee or Madison. I do have one friend here. But mostly because of like my kids' health issues and things like that, we can't really do much out in the community. So I'm not sure anyone's read it. Like, or maybe they have. I'm Facebook friends with some of my neighbors, so they could, but I don't get stopped in the same way, which is both a nice bit of anonymity, but also like I'm wondering, like, because the town's Facebook group, I said this in the in the interview for Jenny, it is very much inspired by my town's Facebook group, where there are some big fights about like, so west of town are these chicken farms, like, they're very smelly, and I can't really smell them from my house, but if you drive by, you will like it's overwhelming. So if anyone is new to town and they mention the fact that there's these chicken farm smells, or they wonder why in the world does the town have tornado sirens that go off at 6 p.m. every night, and then sometimes 2 or 3 times throughout the day, like there's an outpouring of angst when people are like, well, if you don't like it, you don't have to live here. And some newbies want to, like, you know, get a swimming pool in town, but there's a lake in town, a lake you can't swim in for part of the year because there's weird like bugs or parasites or something that, you know, has to get warmed up to like burn them off essentially. But people are very, very territorial about this little town, and I think it's both hilarious and kind of frightening. And so I don't know if I want them to know about this book exactly.
Do you think they would recognize themselves though? Because I feel like people don't, if it's negative, people don't recognize themselves. They're like, oh, that's so funny that she wrote about that, but they don't see themselves.
If the library was open, our library is still closed, so if it was open, I would definitely be in there, because I like the librarians, and I think there would be a lot more. And so the pandemic makes it hard too, because I would have done a lot more outreach. And I definitely know people at bookstores in both big towns. But yeah, no, I don't know about this strange little town, but that's so cool that you're getting stopped in like carpool lines and coffee shops. And, there are a few local self-published authors who sell books at the little grocery store. And I've been tempted to be like, should I put my book at the grocery store? But I haven't done it yet. So we'll see. We'll see if I break down and actually.
You gotta put it there. And when you're checking out, they'll be like, you can just keep it open. They can see the picture.
I am not, I've done such things before. It's not, I don't know how you're handling with your book being in Target. I would just be like, here I am.
No, I go visit it once a week. I just go hang out and be like, hey, how you doing?
That's amazing. That's perfect. So do you feel like, so your next book is set on a cruise ship, and I've been thinking about this because I've written about Wisconsin and I've written about the Chicago area, and I'm like, oh man, I'd really, like, I'm working on a book set in Tennessee, which is where I grew up.
Okay.
I don't know if I have more Wisconsin books than me. Like, do you feel like you have more Long Beach, or have you used up your like universe?
I have it endless. And even my next book, the beginning is still in Long Beach, and my third book will take place in Long Beach. I'll write. I love my city where I live so much, and I'll write stories here as long as I can.
Yeah, exactly. Like young Elise, it's like exactly that kind of book, you know, like that's amazing. Yeah, I don't know if I will continue. I'm not sure what I would write about, but we'll see. Like, it's weird because you're going to become like this writer, you know, just like in that way, and that's amazing. But Yeah.
Okay. One thing I want to talk. Oh wait.
No,
What
go
were
ahead.
you saying? Sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh no, I was just gonna see if we had questions, but go ahead. I think we've got
We
more.
do have. Well, we do have a question right here. Let's if you have any more, add them here to the Q&A. I want to ask you one more question though, because another one of my favorite parts of the book was Jane's relationship with her mom. We talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but it's just such a significant part of the book. And I think that you, like you were saying, she's not a villain completely. Like you can empathize with Jane's mom. You can understand where she's coming from, and it just makes their relationship so complex, because you're not 100% on Jane's side all the time. You're not, you can see where the mom is coming from, I guess. And so I'm wondering where you got your inspiration for that from. Where did because I love writing about complicated mother-daughter relationships too. I know that's from my own baggage. So I'm curious why you decided to write about that in this book.
Sure. Yeah, let's see. There's a couple things here. Like, I think exploring parental mental health is so important. And especially I grew up in a house where we didn't talk about mental health, just if you were having troubles, you went to church, you didn't go talk to someone. Can you still hear me? It said my internet.
Yeah.
Okay.
I lost you for a second, but I got you now.
Rural internet. So anyways, I wanted to sort of think about my own experience growing up with a parent who has depression and is bipolar and is also a collector of things. So my dad has saved, I have 9 brothers and sisters, and he's saved.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I'm the oldest. And he saved every pair of shoes we ever had. And they have a great big 5-acre backyard, and then they own 50 acres. And so there's just all these bins and storage sheds, and then the basement is full, and they're all just full of things that are collected. And have you read Emily Henry's new book? People We Meet on Vacation?
Yes.
Okay.
I
So
loved it.
I thought it was amazing. And I kind of think of Jane's house and even my parents' house as the darker side of what she did there. Because in that book, if you remember, her parents are, they're kind of awkward, but they're very sweet. And Poppy loves them. And she says they have a museum of her childhood.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that is accurate to my parents' house, but kind of with a darker underbelly to it. And not necessarily the warmth you got in that book. And so I pulled from that, and it really got thinking about because this is the thing that drives me crazy in my parents' house is why do you need all this stuff? What is it? What function is it serving? And I think it went from I'm saving this because I want to hand it down. You've got so many brothers and sisters. We'll save these shoes to it becomes this oh, these are the shoes you used to wear, and then it sort of freezes someone in time, which of course is what Jane's mom is doing. So anyways, Jane's mom's character evolved out of a desire to think about parental mental health and think about how that affects a teenager. And then a desire to really sort of think about the stuff we hold on to, why we hold on to it, and how it's not necessarily a good thing. And I tend to be I don't know, I have so much crap on my desk. Here's a crane my husband made me, and here's some ducks from the Kid Sweetly. There's a lot. Oh, here's a sweet little message that came with some flowers that I got. I am sentimental, but we've had to move across country a couple times. I've gotten rid of stuff in great volume, and that's helped me think about it. So then with Jane's mom, I was thinking, okay, so you've got this woman whose life is pretty much on track. And then this tragedy happens and she doesn't know how to deal. And so then her obsession with the personalized stuff, I love thrift stores. And I remember being in one with my friend, and I found a mug much like Jane's mom has with a picture of a kid on it. No. I was like, why would anyone donate this? And why would anyone buy it? Right. And then I was just thinking about how weird it is, how much stuff we personalize and how much and then when people give that away, that's really weird. And if you go to any thrift store, I guarantee you'll find things. I posted some pictures on the Lucky Girl, I made these collages, of cross stitches for Rachel, and then just all these things that had some sentimental value somebody gave away. And I could just see Jane's mom oh my God, no, I've gotta that needs to come to me so I can honor that somebody once loved that. And then that becomes a whole thing. yeah, so that's kind of like, I wanted to treat her both with compassion, but also Jane's frustrated. Jane doesn't want to live among this mess. Yeah. But I also kind of wanted to stay away a little bit from some of the darker sides of my own experience with this. So it was kind of a balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You
I don't know.
you handle her with a lot of love though. Like she doesn't come across as a caricature. And it's just, yeah, you're able to really understand their relationship. You did a good job. And I know it's so hard to take from your own background. From Happily Ever Afters, I experienced a lot of that too. It's hard to take from it and then have to talk about it after too. It's been so I understand where you're coming from there. Yeah.
I don't mean to incriminate anyone, but I will say that I worked through some things while writing this book. I hope you
Yes.
enjoyed it, right? So did you like the part about House on the Rock? Like, did you know what House on the Rock was before you read that?
No, I had never heard of it. So I was like kind of I was exploring it for the first time through the book. And I was like, what is this place?
You should Google it though. It's really weird. And for like, anybody in the audience who's from Wisconsin who's been there, like you can definitely tell us about it in the chat, because it is so weird. It's literally, it takes like 4 hours to get through. It is a museum of like dusty madness that like just keeps going on and on and on. And it's full of carnival figurines and carousels and giant whales and like, again, to talk about objective correlatives, it's the perfect like example of what happens when collecting goes awry, but then you start charging admission for it, And so, yeah, it's really, really weird. I don't even know. Like, if you're ever this way, I'll have to take you just so you can be like, oh God.
Yeah, I want to see it now. You did such a good job of describing it, so I could, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, so yeah, that's like a lot of what Jane is grappling with, is just like, here's my normal going on field trips, here's my home life that I can't, like, it's not like people don't know because the yard is a mess, but it's like people don't know like about what happens behind the doors. So yeah, but yeah.
Okay, you have a question here. I'm going to read it to you, and if there's any more questions, go ahead and add them. So this one says, would love to hear you talk about POV, so point of view. Lucky Girl and Kit are both in first person. How did you choose first person over third? And does the story dictate the POV, or do you prefer first overall? That's a great question.
That is a good question. Let's see. It says you're going to answer this question live. I don't know what that means.
Oh, I just clicked a button. I don't know.
Yeah, so the voice in both of these just came to me in first person. And I do think first person works really, really well in contemporary. I think it's hard to do a good contemporary that's like a really close third, or I don't know if I can even think of any examples. I don't know. First person, like, it's just, you're so immediately in that character's head in first person. And I'm working on a contemporary right now that's two different characters, but they're still both in first person. But this is exciting. There's some secret YA fantasy things going on in my life.
Yay.
That book was my first book that I actually ever wrote in third person, and it was totally different and super, it was strange to do. But I do think the story sometimes dictates the point of view. I think that's a very valid way to say that, because in that book, the fantasy in particular, I wanted to go for this really sort of high elevated narrative tone, and I kind of wanted a narrator, or like a narrator winking at you, from like from inside the story, and you can get that in third person. But yeah, contemporary first just feels right. It feels like that's how you can get inside a teenager's brain. Yeah, so I don't know. Why did you choose first person?
I don't, that's just how my brain works. I mean, all of my favorite books growing up, I think of like Princess Diaries. That's what I read when I was younger, and that's a very voicey first person. So that's what I love to write too. I've never tried third. I'm excited to read this fantasy that's in third. So what do you which one do you like more? Do you like contemporary or fantasy more?
I started in fantasy, like the Pitch Wars book that we were talking about earlier. That was a middle grade fantasy about Marco Polo. Still on submission to this day, 6 years later. So it's actually just going to live in editor's
luck. We don't know.
And then even before that, I wrote fantasies and dystopias and things. So I really like, that's kind of my natural habitat. And Kit was my first contemporary. And that just happened because like I was at medieval times, a story idea came to me. My friend Lizzie was like, um, you need to write this, go ahead and follow that up. And I had just finished this dark YA fantasy. So yeah, like I can't say I prefer one or the other, but I do love the world building that goes into fantasy. And I love some of the rules you can, or some of the things you can get away with. That said, in contemporary, I love that you can like have your character learn some information from the internet or, like, drive themselves across town without having to hike across the mountain and fight, fight trolls along the way or whatever. So I think they both have their strengths. And yeah, I don't know. But it's going to be weird when the fantasy comes out, this new one. It is so different because again, I was trying to challenge myself and play with genre, or not really play with genre, but I was like, actually, I wanted to write a book that kind of reminded me of Erin Morgenstern, and because I love her lush writing, and I wanted to see if I could do it, and I did, and it's so different though than these sort of funny, witty, breezy contemporaries. So I'll be interested to see how it's kind of hits the market and what people think because it's so different. But my sister just texted me. She was reading like a girl and she's like, oh my God, this reads like you talk. This is just like talking to you in your kitchen. I was like, great. Okay. So I guess that's my process in my voice is I just read it like I talk or I write it like I talk. Look in the chat, by the way.
I'm the same.
Are you? If you want to see videos of House on the Rock, Daniel will just put some in there. So
I'm gonna have to check these out later.
Okay, oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think a lot of contemporary writers do that. Like it's their own voice in their head. And so actually that was one thing that I was going to ask you because you were talking about a second book and how easy it was. And one thing I found that was a little bit tricky was trying to distinguish the voices between Kit and Lucky Girl. And so that's one reason why they have such disparate interests. Even though their family situations are not dissimilar, they're both kind of in the same like economic class and they both got mothers they live with. There were times where I was like, oh, it's just getting too close. And then I kind of had to steer that away. So did you find the same in your second book?
So my second book, if you've read Happily Ever Afters, it follows Lenore, who is one of Tessa's best friends in the book. And it was easy to keep their voices different because they're very, very different characters, very different people. Tessa keeps everything inside and is very anxious and it builds up. Lenore says what she thinks. She's a very big, bold personality. And so, yeah, their voices, I don't think they sound alike at all. But now writing my third book now, that's something I've been really thinking about is, and that book is a dual POV of the girl and the boy. I don't know if I'm supposed to talk about this, but whatever. But yeah, it's two characters. And so, yeah, getting their voices, that's what's taking me a little while to make sure I get their voices right and that they don't sound anything like Tessa and Lenore. It's going to be challenging, but it's fun to be challenged, right? It's like, that's what, we don't want to write the same book over and over again. So it's fun to push ourselves a little more. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to read the other question, but what were you going to say?
No, listen.
Okay. There's another one. I'll click the answer live button again, whatever that does. So it says, what are you two reading? Anything you're looking forward to that is coming out this summer that you can recommend? You want to answer that first?
Sure. Well, I think we both just enthusiastically endorsed People We Meet on Vacation. I loved it.
Oh, good.
I read it in the hospital. I liked it better than Beach Read. It was like, you want to talk about a book that gets its character depth right and like makes you think like, oh yeah, okay, these are real people that live in the world, and she just channeled their stories. I loved that book. Let's see, I'm reading Ariadne right now, which is like a retelling of the Theseus and Ariadne myth. So I really I love these like Circe type books. So that's what I'm reading in adult. And then I'm reading a secret project for one of my friends. I have Margaret Owen's new Little Thieves downloaded on my Kindle, and I have Amparo Ortiz's new dragon book. So I've got a bunch of friends' books to read right now, and then I'm just reading Ariadne, which I would recommend for sure. What about you?
Well, I loved People We Meet on Vacation. I did not think anything could be better than Beach Read because I love that book so much, but she did it. Like it's an amazing book. I just finished Tokyo Ever After like 30 minutes before this started. I was reading that. I loved it. It felt very Princess Diaries, like I said, which was my favorite as a kid. I love that book. What else? Some books that are coming out this summer. Blackout is coming out this summer.
You got that book, didn't you?
I did. I like begged my publicist for it early. And then I got the physical arc too, but I read it back in like March, I think. I was like, I need this book. So this is 6 Black, white authors. Should I say all their names? I mean, we all know their names, but yeah, I'm gonna see if I can get them all. Danielle Clayton, Tiffany Jackson, Angie Thomas, Nick Stone, Ashley Woodfolk, and then Nicola Yoon. So they all write these 6 like interconnected love stories. And I had never read anything like that book before. I had never had a book with that many Black characters, with no trauma or pain, but just, just joy. And it was a very emotional experience, and I just love it. I want to give that book to everyone. So that's something, yes, coming out this summer. And then also Jay's Gay Agenda by Jason June. I have an arc for it, but I haven't read it yet. But I've been hearing it's amazing. So I'm really excited for that book too. I think it comes out on Tuesday, I think.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't keep up with like the things coming out. I'm also excited for Blackout. I've not read it yet, but what a powerhouse of like people writing this book. And that's lovely what you said about so many Black characters just finding love and not experiencing trauma. Like, what a good thing. What a lovely thing to have. I've also got some books that I haven't read yet that I'm looking forward to reading. Jay's Gay Agenda, Luck of the Titanic by Stacey Lee is on my shelf to read. I would highly recommend Joan Hayes, The Ones We're Meant to Find.
That's on my list. I really want to read that book. The cover is so perfect. The cover is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, the book is beautiful. You're gonna love it. I read it before she took it on submission, and then I haven't read it since all of the edits, so I'm very, very excited to reread. But yeah, it's gorgeous. And then my friend Megan, MK England, has a new book coming out. I can't remember when it is, but it's called The One True Me and You, and I just got to blurb it, and it's beautiful. It's this like joyous queer love story about a lesbian beauty pageant queen and a non-binary fan person, and they are in like the same hotel for a convention, a beauty pageant, and then a Sherlock Holmes convention essentially. And it's sweet and it's funny and it's so just full of joy. So that one would also be something I'd say put on your radar. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Should we go to so Jamie sent me a Lotto ticket. Should we move on to these? Yeah, to close it out.
Move on to the most important activity of the evening. Yes.
Okay, can I tell you, I've never done this before. I've never had a Lotto ticket or a scratcher or anything. So I'm very excited. I'm not quite sure what to do, but
okay, I'll tell you. So these, I guess you can win up to $5,000. I will say from all the events I've done, we've only won, like my friend Lizzie won $5. I think you scratch off the winning numbers and then you just try and scratch the others to see if you match up. So you want to go first?
Okay. Yes. I will do this. Okay. Okay. I wish I could be showing you, like.
Just tell us what you get.
Okay, winning numbers 12 and 6. So now I just do the rest of them?
Yep, and see if you match. Okay. And then you win the prize, I think, underneath, or the prize shown somewhere.
Oh, so I have to get it 12, 4, 6. I feel like I don't have the luck today. It's not going to happen. Oh, wait, no.
What?
Okay, wait. Check it for me, though. So there's 12, and then I got 12. So I think I won $3. Yay!
You won. You are a lucky person.
For now, I don't know how long it's going to last.
I think you spend 50 cents to ship that back to me, and then I'll
$3. Perfect.
I really wanted to donate like any money we want to charity, but like at this point our total is 8, so maybe I'll just pop an even 10 towards the like World Wildlife Foundation or something.
Yeah.
Okay. My numbers are 6 and 15, and let's see.
Okay.
I'm scratching these off with a binder clip, so it doesn't feel ideal. All right, 21, 19, 23, 18, 14, 1.
Someone in the
9.
chat says they love scratchers.
What'd you say?
Someone in the chat says I love scratchers.
I did not win. So mine were 6 and 15, and I got 21, 19, 23, 18, 16, 14, 9, 8, and 22. You're the lucky one here, Elise.
$3. Thank you.
Congratulations on your win. Now that you've won the lotto, what are you going to do?
I don't know. Right. Go buy a ice cream cone, maybe cupcake.
You've won the lotto in Wisconsin. Actually.
Yeah, that's true.
But
well, this was such a joy talking about your beautiful book. Anyone here who has not bought it already, why have you not bought it already? You need to order a copy now from Boswell Books. Thank you so much for inviting me here to talk about it.
Thank you for being here and for reading the book and letting me just sort of ask you questions about your book too. Questions that I've been saving up for a while because I didn't want to like nerd out online and be like, so what about this next book? But yeah, but I will say one thing though, as we were scratching off, like inevitably every time I get a scratcher, and I don't do this normally, I'm like, okay, but this is the one. This is going to be the $5,000 ticket or whatever. And I think that's the lottery ticket impulse, is like just this one, or like when you're on in a casino, just one more slot or something like that. And like, I think that's an interesting human impulse, but yeah.
It's true. And it's so universal. And that's why your book is, so relatable.
Like everyone in the world should read my book. All the
yes.
billions of people. Yes. But yeah, no, thank you so much for being here. And Jenny, thank you for hosting us at Boswell.
Yes, thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you. Thank you so much, Jamie and Elise, for your time. Thank you for your words. Friends, if you'd like a book and fabulous swag, here's the fabulous swag and a signed book plate. Visit Boswell at boswellbooks.com for a book, or come and see us on Downer Avenue. Thank you to everyone. We wouldn't have a bookstore without you. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank you, friends. For being here. Bye.
Thank you.